NBA show today. Lots of things happening across the league. We can break down the Russell Westbrook retirement, talk about Russ, talk about all the things that we're going to miss about Russ, the criticisms of Russ, what a great career it was overall. I also want to talk about NBA depth charts, where teams stand, what are teams needing still, because this is a big time of year where there's still a handful of capable free agents, a handful of capable restricteds that can still make an impact on NBA rosters, guys that really have an opportunity to stand out at the end of the day and still do things that are right now currently without jobs. Right, how the apron system has kind of affected the NBA contract situations in general is a fascinating conversation. I think it's something that the average fan doesn't really take into account all that often, which is unfortunate. Right, teams can't just do whatever they want at this point, and this is why when somebody brings up something like, well, why is Victor Wembanyama signing for a 25% maximum such a big deal? Him not taking the full max is the difference of right now $9 million a season. By the end of his contract, it's nearly $15 million per year. That's a mid-level exception player. Like, that's a good basketball player different between those teams. That's the difference between losing a rotation player and keeping one. Like, it's a massive difference in the cap era and especially the apron era, being able to keep your guys and keep them in place, because a lot of teams right now, teams that have guys that aren't willing to take less, they're in tough situations. Like the New York Knicks in coming years are going to be in a really, really tough situation where they're going to have to decide, right? Karl Anthony Towns needs an extension, right? If he's not willing to take, 3 years, 180, if he wants his full 4-year, $272 million contract, wherever that is going to be massively prohibitive. Right, with the money that him and Brunson presumably is going to get the full max. I don't know if he's going to take a bath again financially. He already did it once. I don't know if he's going to do it again. OG Anunoby makes nearly $50 million per year. They have significant financial restraints, especially since their ownership has said they will not be a second apron team. They're not going to spend into the second apron. If Karl Anthony Towns wants that 68 to 73 on that progressive contract, all of a sudden you're talking about that it's not a want, not a need, but a true necessity of a player like Mikal Bridges leaving, potentially Josh Hart leaving, like Miles McBride. Like Deuce McBride's already going to have to go. There's essentially no chance that Deuce is brought back after this year, because right now he's on 3.9. There's almost no chance he gets less than 10 on a contract next season, right? Unless things really fall apart for Deuce. Like that's about the round of money that he's going to make. They are in a situation where if these players do not make less, if they do not take less, if Karl Anthony Towns wants full bag, it's going to be a real problem for them going forward. In 3 years' time, it will be a real problem where they're going to have to decide who's on that roster and who's not. And these are how championship cores are kept together, right? The apron era has changed everything. First question on the board is, what are your thoughts on Halliburton coming back and the Pacers' chances? Listen, if Tyrese Halliburton comes back at 95% of what Halliburton was, this is an NBA Finals contender. I love the Zubats ad. I think that their starting five is incredibly good. I think it's incredibly good. I think they have fun depth on that team. I think they've got enough depth where there's still moves they can make as well. I think there's one more roster player that needs to go before the season, probably Jarris Walker. Howie, what's going on? But the reality is they need to cut, I think it's another $6 million to get into the financial spot that they're looking to be in. So maybe Jarris Walker's moved out for a second round pick or whatever it is. Maybe Obi Toppin is traded for a lesser version financially of what Obi Toppin is. But the idea of adding Ivica Zubac, who is right now, based off the viewpoint in the NBA, one of the most underrated basketball players on planet Earth currently, on one of the best contracts for a big on planet Earth right now. I think that they're an exceptionally good team. Now, if Halliburton comes back and he is 75% of himself, different questions arise. Right? They need that guy to be that guy at the end of the day. They need Tyrese Halliburton to be a top 10 player in the NBA. Right? They need him to be a top 10, top 15 player in the league. That's what they need from him. So much of what is created in that Rick Carlisle system is based around the idea that he is going to be the engine. Quick question here on YouTube. Hey, Westy, where can I watch your new pod episode, or has it not been released yet? It has not been released yet. So we're banking a few episodes. We're gonna roll all of this out, I think, right around the very beginning of September. So we're gonna come out with an introductory episode. They're actually playing a press conference for us, which is very, very cool. But an introductory episode is coming out. That's going to be your winners and losers of the offseason. It's more of an abbreviated one. Then we're going to come out with divisional previews. So we're going to have all 6 divisional previews coming out, some predictions for the NBA season, maybe some standings predictions. And then from that point on, it's going to be a weekly episode. And we're going to do weekly episodes breaking down all of the news, notes, topics dealing with the NBA, with hopefully a little bit of a finer grain detail. And there's some fun stuff coming up with that, some press credential ideas, where we have some access to certain teams and certain opportunities that are going to allow us to be at court level, on court side, and do some really, really fun stuff. So if you do not follow my co-host for that, which is Slumdog Hoops on Instagram, give Malik a follow, because Malik's content is fantastic and he deserves that love, right? I'm so happy that I'm being able to do this show with him. He's been a mutual of mine, a friend of mine through social media for over a year now. So the idea that we can do this show together is fantastic. I'm just over the moon. I'm just so excited to do it. So it's very exciting. The idea of being in the studio yesterday, we recorded all day, working with 3 cameras versus just me holding my iPhone and yapping for a couple minutes was a fascinating change. They've got big hopes for what we're going to do. They're putting a lot behind this podcast. They're really putting a lot into it. And I'm very, very excited for how it looks and how it felt and the opportunities that have been given. So it's a very, very exciting time for us, and there's lots of stuff coming. So keep your lookout. Like I said, check me out on YouTube. If you don't follow me on YouTube, get on YouTube, Instagram, all those spots. Check out True Sports Live on Instagram, because True Sports is where we're going to be doing this, and who's given me this opportunity. So if you don't follow True Sports and True Sports Basketball, give that a go. Also, there might be some NFL and some MLB content with yours truly coming up as well through them. So if you want more content and more content that I'm doing, that's an opportunity for you to see it, because there's a lot more coming up than's already in the pipeline. So I'm very, very excited. But hopefully at some point beginning of September, these episodes are going to roll out, and they should roll out across all platforms. So very excited, like uncontrollably excited. So I was so happy after yesterday recording all day. The studios are in Markham. I don't live in Markham. It's a long drive. 401 was shut down. It took me 2.5 hours to get home. Man, I was happy as hell the entire way. So that says a whole lot about how the day went when you can sit in rush hour traffic, standstill traffic for a couple hours and not be too mentally affected by it. So it was a really fun day, a really great day. And I'm excited to see where it goes from here, because it's been a blast so far. So it's, fantastic. Let's see where we're at here. Okay, so when is the roster compliance deadline? So you need to have it done. I believe that it's going to have to be done by day 1 of the regular season for roster compliance. So for the number of roster, when it comes to things like aprons, you have till the end of the year, right? But for roster compliance, it's going to be when you set your NBA roster, you need to have all of that figured out. And then there's a whole bunch of restrictions that go along with that. But Atlanta still has moves to make. Golden State, I think, only has 13 on their roster right now. There's still a lot of stuff that needs to be done. But yeah, I do have a strong opinion on Mo Gay. He's very athletic. He's very active. The offensive side of the court is going to be what decides kind of his career, right? That's just the reality of it. It's an unfortunate reality, but it's just the truth. The offensive side of the court is going to decide where he ends up falling as an NBA player. Because on the defensive side, the activity and the length and the athleticism and everything it plays, you need to be able to functionally have a specific role on the court, right? Like, you need to be able to have a specific role on the court. And, it's tough for him right now because he has a defensive role that fits, but outside of playing in transition and kind of catching lobs, even the lob stuff can be really interesting because there's a lack of strength there. It gets sketchy. Apron is December 31st. I know for second apron stuff, there was teams still maneuvering to get under second apron at the trade deadline last year. So I think there is apron availability through to the end of the financial year for the NBA, where you can still wheel and deal, because that's where like you can be hard capped at a certain level depending on your moves. But yeah, and then roster for the 30th ish. Yeah, no, I think it's day one of the regular season. You need to have the cut down happen. You can't be north of 15. Now, there's still stuff like exhibit 10s and all this kind of stuff that factor into that. But this is what I'm saying. There's so many rules about roster compliance right now where you need to kind of navigate through everything. So it becomes a little bit trickier. But there's a lot going on in the NBA. Yeah, so I think you for apron status, for luxury tax payments, essentially for apron payments, it's till the end of the regular season, and then you need to be compliant at that point. But yeah, roster compliance is a little bit different. How do you feel about a post? Yeah, Watson to Cavs. Do you think that gets them their tier one type player team? I still don't see how that trade works. So that's what's difficult. I know obviously they were able to save $6.5 million today trading away Schroeder for Trey Mann. It would be a really, really tough deal to make work. And all they can pay him, I think, is $17 million. That's what Denver's offering him. Like that's already what he's being offered. Would you rather go to Cleveland on 17 or play with Jokic on 17? Because I tell you this much, I'd rather play with Jokic on 17 than then go to Cleveland and try to figure out a role with Harden, who's definitely going to be coming back, Donovan Mitchell, Mobley, Allen. Like, he does fit into the three there for sure, but like there's not a lot to be fed on that court. And there's a lot of standstill players on that court, right? Like, there's a lot of guys that are ball dominant that want the ball in their hands. I think Peyton Watson falls into a background role with Denver. There's more opportunity for him to run in actions, right? Like you can make him play in actions more regularly in a motion offense rather than a standstill offense. I just, if they're paying around the same money, like why wouldn't you just go back to Denver? And I know Denver needs to get under the second apron. If you bring back Peyton Watson, you have wheeling and dealing you got to do, right? Like, you have to move off of one of Cam Johnson, which I would not want to do because the floor spacing is so critical, or Christian Brown. Now you may have to attach assets to move Christian Brown at this point, but you need to find a way out of that second apron. And if you're going to bring back Peyton Watson, like it's going to be difficult. It's going to be difficult. So the Kroenke's going to have to kind of figure out what that is. Yeah, honestly, if you gave me, so this is how he says, Cavs would have to dump Jared Allen because they still need to sign James Harden. Would you rather James Harden or Jared Allen at this point? Now, I'm not talking about in the regular season. I'm talking about when it comes to the playoffs, right? Both players are flawed when it comes to the playoffs. I tell you this much, I'd rather Jared Allen. I would. And then maybe that's a stylistic thing for me. Maybe it's a bias towards bigs. I don't know. I would rather Jared Allen in a playoff setting with that team as a screen and roll option than James Harden and what he's produced. I just I don't get it. I don't get. I at this point though, I wouldn't give James Harden a mid-level exception. Like, if I'm running a franchise, if I'm the general manager or president of basketball operations for a team, James Harden is a non-starter for me. Like, he is somebody that I'm not offering a contract to. Period. I would have never made that trade, not in a million years. He is just not anything basketball-wise that I would want to put into a situation where you have the opportunity to play in the playoffs. It's been proven time and time again, right? At this point in his career, it's very, very hard to make a James Harden situation work in a playoff setting. It's just the reality. And I know the James Harden fans get all pissed off when you say that, but like that's just the reality. And yeah, they could move Strus, but you can't move Strus to Denver. Right? If Denver is going to lose Watson, they're going to do it to save money, right? They're not going to want a return of assets because they still need to get under the second apron. So they're not going to take on that $14 million a year or whatever that Strus is making. And I don't have the exact number ahead of me, but like he's making a fairly substantial amount of money because if they're moving a player, they need the cap savings because they need to get under the second apron. So if you take back Strus, well, then you're still in a situation where you still need to jump another player to get under that level. So it just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. The Cavs thing has always been kind of two left shoes to me. Now maybe they make it work, maybe they find a way. But like from the Denver side of things, like I just don't see the fit. I just don't see the fit. Yeah, Peyton Watson also rumored to the Clippers, Milwaukee. Yeah, and Milwaukee could make sense because Milwaukee could do something. Now this just kicks the can 1 year down the road for Denver. If Peyton Watson got moved to Milwaukee and they sent Jaime Jaquez to Denver and attached a pick, like a lightly protected pick or whatever. Now you're in a situation where you save some money, but next year Jaime Jaquez needs to be paid. So you kind of just kick the can down the road 1 year, and then you're going to be in the same situation as last time, right? So it's going to be really, really interesting. And this is why when people are like, oh man, I can't believe all they got for Michael Porter Jr. was Cam Johnson. It's because they needed the financial savings, right? They needed the financial savings to make this work, right? Yeah. So this is one too. I love him. I think Porter's a dog. I don't think he's like a starting caliber guard or anything, but I just think he plays his ass off. I just think he plays his ass off. I think he's talented. I'm a big fan of the game. So, yeah, good on you for recognizing it. Thoughts on the Beal contract? Beal contract makes sense. Declining the player option for like 5.8 or whatever it was, re-upping, getting 11.5 essentially over 2. With a player option for the second year, so it mitigates all downside for him. So I think it's a good deal. I was hoping that Beal would go to Miami, like just for the interest factor, because I think he really, really fits something that they need there. And I think that, people have this, perception of Bradley Beal because of when he was making so much money and he wasn't worth that. Bradley Beal on a biannual exemption, right? On a taxpayer mid-level, that's a very valuable player if he can stay healthy, right? That's a good ass player. So, but yeah, it would be tough. And yes, there are 3-team trades that you could probably work out. I don't think Craig Porter's necessarily the guy that I'd want for Denver. You know what I mean? Like I don't think that's necessarily the play that I'd want. Like I would rather a second asset, like draft asset, than Craig Porter, just because they need to save so much money. Right. So, and I know he's got a small contract, but like, I just think that we're at a point where I'd rather that second asset and not take back any salary if feasible. Right. So, and there are teams that can make that work. Right. There are teams that can make that work at the end of the day. Or they dump Cam Johnson, do a trade exemption. Yeah, they could do that, but like you're trying to avoid that, right? Like something that you want with any Jokic-led offense is you want floor spacing, right? You want floor spacing, and people can shit on Cam Johnson all they want and, say, oh, he had a bad year. Guys, he shot 44% from 3 last year. You know what I mean? Like in a bad season where he only averaged whatever it was, 12.5 points a game or whatever. 44% from 3 is so important, especially since that roster doesn't have like an overwhelming amount of shooting, especially with Tim Hardaway Jr. leaving. I do not trust the growth or development of like Julian Strawther, so you're in a situation where Jamal Murray had a career year shooting the 3 ball. But like outside of I think it was the first 12 games, Cam Johnson shot like 28% from 3. And after that, he was 50% from 3 for the season. I don't want to get rid of him. You might need to next year. You might need to get rid of him, but like, even if you dump Cam to keep Peyton Watson's not the shooter that Cam Johnson is. Right. And then you're in a situation where, let's say your starting lineup is Jamal Murray, Peyton Watson, Christian Brown, Aaron Gordon, Nikola Jokic. You now have Gordon in the dunker, Jokic at the nail, Jamal Murray running backside options, right? Which is fantastic. Can Jamal Murray continue to shoot the 3 at the level he did last year? Who knows? Because he's always been a very good 3-point shooter. But last year, like he went silly from 3. Christian Brown, who shot it absolutely terribly. And Peyton Watson, who has shot the ball well from 3 for exactly 30 games in his career, which is the 30 games that's going to get him paid. Let's just be real. And I'm a big Peyton Watson fan, but like there is not a long track record of him being a knockdown shooter, right? You are betting on that. The problem is, to dump Christian Brown, you have to attach assets. You're not going to dump his contract. There's still $100 million left on that contract. You're not dropping it for free. So if you drop it to somebody, you got to attach picks. Go look at what Denver has in the war chest, draft capital wise. It ain't pretty. You know what I mean? It ain't pretty at the end of the day. And I love Trevin Brazil. I think Trevin Brazil is fantastic. Probably not ready to play a real role, right? I love Deron Holmes, but like probably not ready to play a real role yet. So you got to be really, really careful in terms of how you're framing it because you need shooting, you need floor spacing, right? And the idea, so like this is a statement here. Surely Christian Brown will bounce back this season. Of course, not worth the money, but at least be a positive player who helps win games. That's the hope. And I am probably higher on Christian Brown than most people. The 3-point shooting's always been a question, right? Like it's always been a question with Christian Brown. It is a wild ride, right? Sometimes the percentages look all right, but the reality is it's 5 games where he's super hot, 5 games where he couldn't hit water. You know what I mean? And that's always been kind of the way with Christian Brown, right? And there have been times in his career where he's been a reluctant 3-point shooter. Is the other thing. Plays beautifully off Jokic. I think he's definitely going to have a better year this year. But I think that what Cam Johnson does is so much more important for this team right now, despite the fact that, you know, Christian Brown's a very good defender because they've got Aaron Gordon and Spencer Jones and guys that can really defend right now, bigger players, bigger body players, but like still guys that can defend on the perimeter as well. So, and they're a pretty good team about scheming defense. I really want that floor spacing. You know what I mean? So if you can move Brown and you don't have to attach much to do it, absolutely. You do that 100 times out of 100. If you can prove Brown and Najee, you do that 100% of the time. Problem is that Christian Brown for Pat Williams doesn't save you enough money to matter, right? They need to save like literally, like I think it's 18 million. They need to cut that money. Like they need to, right? So they need to take back essentially nothing. You know what I mean? So maybe if you can attach Christian Brown and seek Najee for Pat Will, but like it gets tricky, right? And Trevor Brazil was a draft crush of mine too. I loved him. So I'm with you on that. 15-5 and 55%. Yeah, on all unguarded. Right. So like this is what I'm saying. Like I am not saying Christian Brown's not a good basketball player. What I'm saying is that Christian Brown makes $25 million a year. Okay. He was hurt and bad last year. Like that's the combination. He was hurt for most of the year, and when he was on the court, it was bad. Right? So he did not play well. He plays off of Jokic beautifully. That's why he got paid, right? That's why he got paid at the end of the day, because of how good the chemistry is between those two. But you need that reliable shooter because you got to think about it, right? If Cam Johnson's on the court, you need to defend him. If Michael Porter Jr. is on the court, you need to defend him. You take that guy off and you add a questionable shooter like Peyton Watson onto the court with a questionable shooter in Christian Brown on the court. Now, all of a sudden, you don't have to defend 4 on the court because there are times too where Aaron Gordon's jump shooting kind of leaves him a little bit as well, right? So now all of a sudden you're in a lineup where you have to defend Jokic, you have to defend Murray on the perimeter, but you're not overly committed to the idea that you need to have tight closeouts on Christian Brown, Peyton Watson, Aaron Gordon all the time. You can sag off those guys because you'd rather those guys shoot it and try to beat you. You can't sag off Cam Johnson. You sag off Cam Johnson on unguarded, he's 52%. You know what I mean? You can't sag off him, right? You have to respect it. So there are levels to the shooting game. And Christian Brown is a very good unguarded 3-point shooter at times in his career. Good basketball player, 25 million with 4 seasons left of 25 million with an injury, coming off an injury and a bad performance. When you need to cut about $20 million off your payroll, Christian Brown's the guy that moves that needle, right? Because you need that floor spacing, right? You need that floor spacing. You saw me coaching a rep ball team? Oh, did you? Nice, man. Yeah, and that's the thing too, is like this is part of it too, is the Christian Brown value diminishes without Nikola Jokic next to him. And like it sucks to say that, but like it's that's the reality. They have a little bit of draft capital, but very, very little. Where do you think Matherin will end up? I really just thought he'd end up back in LA with the Clippers, right? Like it just makes too much sense for them to just bring him back. Now with the Beal signing, like it doesn't make as much sense. I, at this point, I don't know. Like Golden State still has some money to spend, so maybe I don't know what these accusations are about Christian Brown. Um, but it's a tough one. Like I could see him going there if Dallas could find room for him, but like they just gave Najee Marshall a ton of money. They've got a lot of bodies. It doesn't make as much sense there. If the Raptors moved like RJ Barrett or something, like I could see him there. But like people have talked about Portland, but like I don't like the Portland fit very much because he's like a hyper on ball player too. It's a weird fit, man. Like I kind of like the Indiana fit. But like it's a tough one. Like Ben Matherin's a very niche player, right? Miami's not going to be a thing for him, right? Like, yeah, they own 125. That's right. It wasn't a 4, it was a 5-year deal. But yeah, it's a tricky thing, man. Christian Brown's owed a ton of money, a ton of money. So it's a tough one. It's a tough contract, unfortunately, right? So it's a really, really tough contract. Matherin equals 2x Cam Thomas. Well, they're different. They're different. Matherin at least like will try on the defensive end. Homering against one of our pitchers. Oh, yeah. No, we had a really good season, and we recruited a ton of players, so we're even better now. Do you think the Nuggets will get to the second apron? Their ownership group came out and said they will not start the season above the second apron. Like they sound very committed to not paying that money, which like that's their prerogative. But it's gonna be tough, man. Like they need to. Let me just get Nuggets Spotrac. Let me just get their exact number right now because it's easier than just guessing. So they need to cut 15 million clear to get below the aprons. And like I said, ownership came out and said they will not be an apron team. They want to get under the aprons. Like if they want to get under the second apron, it's 2 and change. But they still need to add a body too. You know what I mean? Like, but it's tough. You look at their contract situation and you go, okay, well, Christian Brown this year is almost 22 million. Cam Johnson's 23 million. I honestly, I would hate this. I wonder if they look to move Aaron Gordon. Aaron Gordon's got trade value. You could get assets for Aaron Gordon. I would hate that. It would be one of the last players I'd want to move because he's one of my favorite players in the league. But like if you look at their salary cap situation, if you move Aaron Gordon, you can bring a piece back. You might be able to bring 2 minor pieces back. You can get draft capital. You clear long-term money. There's a lot of sense in it, but like it would suck. It would suck. It would be an unfortunate thing. And there are some smaller ways they can go about it. If they were able to move off of like 3 minor pieces, you can kind of get to the number, but like that's hard to do. It makes multiple trades. That Zeke Najee contract is so tough to move. But they're in a rough spot, right? Like if they move Julian Strother, they can get below the second apron, right? Which that's easy enough. It's getting below the first apron. And like I said, they seem fully committed in the idea that they will not pay first apron money. Somebody sent me a super chat. So this is a basketball specific podcast today, but it's a super chat, so I'm definitely going to answer that question. And like I said, guys, if you want to guarantee your questions get answered, I'm pretty good about answering them. I appreciate the support anyways, but the super chats are always going to get me to pop you right up right away, no matter what the topic is. And I appreciate the support because this does kind of go towards what I'm calling my travel budget. So every time that somebody supports the show, all this money is just getting banked so I can go to games and do stuff live in games and maybe travel to some games. And like the dream is get to a point where next year NBA Summer League and the NBA draft, I can go cover those. So anytime somebody does a super chat or signs up for a membership or does anything, I'm going to get some merchandise coming out soon. All that stuff, as soon as that money comes in, it goes immediately into my savings to build up for what I'm calling my dream fund. So I always appreciate the support when people give it. Jay's call up Ricky Tiedemann. I actually got tricked by a report today where they said they did call up Ricky Tiedemann. I almost made a video about it because I was so psyched about it. He's still working his way back, right? I love Ricky. He's one of my favorite prospects in the Jays system over the last 5 years, period. I love the kid. I think he's gonna be a stud. I'd be tempted to bring him up, right? But he's still figuring out his location and stuff because he's still pretty fresh off of his rehab, right? So, but I imagine it will come sooner rather than later. I appreciate the super chat. But yeah, thanks, man. I appreciate it. Where are we at here? So, but yeah, no. So Denver's in a really challenging spot contractually. Schroeder getting bounced around again. Yeah, Dennis Schroeder loves getting traded. I tell you, or hates it, one or the other. It's a tricky situation because, like I said, I think Trey Mann's a good player. I think Dan Schroeder fits what they need, and like I said, if Christian Anderson's not ready to play right away, this was actually a deal that Sam Vecini talked about. I think 2 weeks ago on his podcast, where he said like they could take on the money, they can just throw them Trey Mann and the second round pick and get the deal done and eat the 6.8 million. So good on Sam Vecini because he called that trade exactly, which is dope. But yeah, no, that's sick, Howie. I appreciate that, man. Yeah, I'm working on it right now. So hopefully it looks good. I think it's gonna look good. And then for the podcast that I'm starting, they're actually making and designing a bunch of merch for us right now as well. So that's pretty sick. Can they trade Brown? Well, Aaron Gore for Anthony Black, you mean? That would save them a little bit of money. I don't know if they'd be willing to do that right away though. You know, like I said, I don't know if Orlando is going to be overly interested in adding another guy with questionable shooting background for a whole lot of money because their team's expensive. You know, I mean, if they're moving Anthony Black, I think they're going to be wanting draft capital back because they need to save money. You know what I mean? Orlando's in a spot where their team is ultra expensive right now. They need to save money. So that's a tricky one, right? So they're in a situation where if they move Anthony Black, and they don't have to right now because he's still on the cheap deal, they don't need to move him till the offseason, or they can re-sign him, they can move Jalen Suggs, right? Which is the way that I kind of thought they would go about it, right? Is moving Jalen Suggs. They've got Jace Richardson, who's looked really good in summer league. I was high on Jace Richardson to begin with. You know, they've got some guard depth. If they bring back Anthony Black, get him to sign for, 22, 23 million a year or whatever it ends up being, trade Jalen Suggs for some assets, a little bit of cap clearance, right? You're in a situation now where you have some flexibility and you have some young guards and you have some draft picks where they can put together a really interesting team. So I like the upside of Orlando if they play this the right way. Now, I thought after last year, they fired their coach, right move. I thought they were going to go out and acquire like a high-end offensive mind. Sean Sweeney's an interesting one because Sean Sweeney's known as like one of the best defensive coaches in the sport, but not really known as an offense guy. This is not to say he can't coach offense, but so he must have interviewed his ass off because I tell you, he is known as like a defensive strategist. He's a defensive coordinator, pure. So I'm interested to see what he's able to do to unlock the offensive issues with the team, some of the imbalance because so many guys operate in the same space. It'll be fun to see the job that he's able to do. But I thought they were going to go out and try to get a guy who's like a pure offensive guy. So it was interesting to see them go with a defensive minded coach who hopefully can show a lot more than just the defensive stuff. And if it's funny too, because if you look at other coaches, Nick Nurse was known as like a defense guy. Was known as an offense guy. I thought Nick Nurse's offensive structures were boring as hell. You know what I mean? I thought it was basic. I thought it was white bread. You know what I mean? Defensively, he did lots of fun stuff, man. He really started to throw in those hybrid defenses and throwing box and ones at guys and throwing, rotational zones. And he does a really, really fun thing. So Yeah, I always thought it was funny because sometimes these guys come in with a reputation of being one thing, and then you watch them go, and it's like, oh, they can actually do that other thing pretty good as well. How do these teams analyze assistant coaches? So think of it. The NBA is not much different from the NFL, right? Like they have assistant coaches who are prioritizing different things. So when you're talking about like your defensive schemes that you run, those are usually the job of certain assistant coaches, right? So they will design a defensive system, right? The head coach is going to implement and obviously have input on what those systems are and everything else. But you are hiring guys that specialize in very specific categories, right? So each coaching staff is going to have like their defensive staff and their offensive staff, right? And there's a little bit of crossover on an NBA staff, of course, like certain guys work on different things, but the reality is that's where like those defensive concepts that you're designing are done by a coach, no different than an offensive or defensive coordinator in the NFL, right? It's just the play structures are different. Do you value Boncaro and Franz differently? Yes. So both have their injury concerns, both have their limitations as players, right? Paulo Boncaro is a hyper heliocentric player who can be ball stoppy, and the three-point shooting is questionable, and there's defensive effort questions, and there's sometimes awareness questions. But at the end of the day, if you said, hey, next year Paulo's going to go out and average 28, 9, and 7, I'd be like, you know what? I can see it. Franz is different because again, the three ball is still a problem. He has to work kind of from the mid range and some dribble penetration and everything like that, but pretty high level defender, a little bit more defensively versatile, a little bit more high IQ as a player. I feel more comfortable with him as a ball mover sometimes, but more offensive limitations, right? And the injury history is starting to pile up a little bit. And both of them are hyper expensive. So I don't think the value trade wise for those two players would be all that different. I actually do think there are times where if Franz puts together a healthy year, I think that his trade value could actually be higher because I think he's easier to plug into more teams. So the teams that really like Paulo Boncaro and view him as a one, those teams would be able to pay out the ass for him. They would be willing to pay out the ass for him. And there would be 3 or 4 teams that are bidding heavy for Paulo Boncaro. For Franz Wagner, I think there might be 15 or 18 teams who view him as a number 2 and might have that number 1 guy that they feel meshes really well. So I think that Boncaro is the higher level player, but Franz Wagner is more of that balanced player that is more attractive to more teams. So I think that's going to elevate his market, if that makes sense. Zuby Ejiofor is a guy I like. I like Zuby. I've always liked Zuby. Zuby actually grew on me a lot during the draft process, but I'm a big fan of Zuby Ejiofor. I think that he's going to be a really good defender. I think worst case scenario, like I said, I know the Precious Achua comps are there. They're not the same player. Zuby's a lot more physically strong and a little bit less bouncy, but like the energy level, right, is reminiscent, right? If he turns into Onyeka Okongwu, like slightly less offense, more defense, it wouldn't shock me. If you told me in a couple years that he's doing an Isaiah Stewart impression, it wouldn't shock me. I think he's a damn good basketball player. I think he can do a lot of different things. I think he can score if you set him up in the right way. Like he's not going to score off isolation at the NBA level or anything, but I think you can run him off back cuts. I think you can run him off ghost actions and stuff like that. Get him into the nail, run some short roll. He can do those things, right? So I really like Zuby. And I think defensively he has the chance to be like a very good defender, not like an all NBA defender, but like a really, really rock solid defender that can kind of defend across your front line depending on matchups. So he's always one that I'm more excited about than not. How do you think Darko is going to do this year? So Wood asks, how do you think Darko is going to do this year? Honestly, I love the growth and development that I saw from Darko Rajakovic last year. I think that in previous years he did not have anybody. Scotty 2 years ago had kind of a rough year defensively, right? The awareness was all over the point. The off-ball defense was exciting but problematic sometimes. The on-ball defense was exciting but problematic sometimes. we're at the point now with Sky where Sky is a dog, and I think that that was a lot due to the fact that Darko really just bought into the idea of, and it's something I talked about before the year. Is at the end of the season 2 years ago, I said I need this team to be full, full high pickup, high intensity, switch everything, just be havoc creators. And Darko went with a havoc creation defense. And I think it worked out really well. He had the dogs to do it at the end of the day, right? I think you've got, if the Kawhi deal goes through, you've got more dogs to be able to play with in that system now, right? So I think that Darko is a good coach. I think that Darko has sometimes had a roster that doesn't make sense for the way that he wants to coach. This year, it's a little bit closer to a Darko Rajakovic looking team. So he has less excuses, right? And another year of development as well. So um, I I think that there's a real opportunity for Darko to take a big jump, right? A big jump at the end of the day. Is your cousin actually Jordan Walker? Because like if so, like that's awesome, man. Yeah, podcast will be coming out in a couple weeks. We filmed the first episode yesterday. I'm very, very excited. Very excited. Yeah, if your cousin actually is Jordan Walker, that is one, dope. Two, awesome. Thank you. What do you think about the Raps next season? This kind of flows into the last question, right? I think the Raptors could be really good. Obviously, you never know. Kawhi Leonard gets hurt in Game 6. Things look different. If they can stay healthy, I think the Colin Murray Boyles jump is going to be significant, right? Like you look at the shape he's in, you look at the fact he's been in the gym all summer. The guy looks like he's down 20 pounds, right? So I think you're going to see even more versatility from Colin Murray Boyles. I think that Scotty Barnes in a less offensively oriented role is going to be more dynamic, right? The numbers may not pop big time, but I think it's going to be better. I think RJ is going to be in a more natural role where him and Brandon Ingram really, really stunted each other at times. I think Emmanuel quickly is so critical for this team. I like the way that they've built out their depth. I think that Toronto, if the Kawhi trade goes through and they have a requisite level of health, I think it's for sure, again, a top 6 team in the East. I think there's a very good chance top 4 team in the East. I really like the roster. Yeah, CMB is going to be a menace. Absolutely. And everybody that follows my shit knows how highly I think of that man. So, yeah. Where do you think DeRozan will end up? I think the Heat make the most sense now with Beal off the market. I still don't like the fit all that much. They need a little bit of creation, though. So I think if he's willing to come off the bench on the minimum, I think the Heat could make a lot of sense. I think Minnesota is like a sneaky fun pick for him because like the idea that you could just play him at the 3 or, like I said, like Jaden McDaniels, I don't love Jaden McDaniels at the 4, unfortunately, but like it looks like they're committed to that. So like Minnesota could be interesting. Detroit could be interesting. I don't necessarily love the fit all that much, but like it's interesting. But there's a bunch of options for DeMar. The reality is DeMar can get you a bucket. The problem is he going to give up everything that he gets? And that's a real possibility. Oh. Yeah, I don't know about the perfect Tobias Harris replacement because Tobias could defend a bit, right? And Tobias could still space it a bit. Like Tobias Harris is a better shooter than DeMar DeRozan, and a much better defender, like remarkably better. But he can replace some of the offensive stuff for sure. He can replace it better on that end. More realistic, Nimi Keita or Hugo Gonzalez for 6 man. I would say neither. I think Nimi's going to start, so Mitch will come off the bench. But like Nimi will start, so that's unlikely. And Hugo doesn't score enough, right? Like the defense is awesome, but like he's just not going to score enough to be that guy. I don't think. I really like the player, but the offensive game let's be real. Like the offensive game is very, very problematic right now. Like he has so much development he needs on that side. But yeah, it's really tough, right? So yeah, and this is what I'm saying, right? Like the money is huge for the 2 big guys, and you factor in the Desmond Bane money, which is big money, and you factor in the Suggs money, which is big money now on a declining deal. But yeah, so I think Terrence Shannon could have a fun year statistically. I don't know how much he's going to affect winning at the end of the day, right? Oh man, this is a tough one. If the Kawhi trade doesn't work out, what do the Raptors do? You still got to move Ingram. Ingram is just not a fit on this roster. I know I've made so much content kind of shitting on Brandon Ingram and his fit overall, but like I mean it when I say it. Like it just does not work. So you need to look to move him. There are teams that have massive trade exemptions, not quite big enough to fit with him, but like at the end of the day, like you need to move him somewhere. There's got to be a marketplace for him, but you're not going to get Kawhi Leonard back for it, unfortunately. Gray Dick, there's no use for Gray Dick on this roster. So it would be interesting. I think the Clippers were giving up a really good player. Um, Hold on. Sorry. Sorry, my son's texting me right now. Um, my son's trying to make plans, so I'm currently trying to figure out what the plan is there with him. Um, yeah, so there we go. So I've fulfilled the fatherly duties of figuring out what he's up to this evening. So yeah, um, yeah. But if the Kawhi trade doesn't go through, the Brandon Ingram stuff is a challenge. Right. It's a challenge. I just don't know how much marketplace there is. I think that's where you really have to go to Detroit and go, hey, you guys fucked up your whole offseason. You guys buried your whole offseason. Do you want this guy? We can take on some salary. we can move some money around. But like there are teams like maybe Minnesota has no way to make that work financially. But there are teams that might be willing to do it. But like I tell you, there's not a Kawhi Leonard out there for it. So it's a tough situation. It's a tough situation at the end of the day. You want Brandon Ingram? Shit, I'll drive Brandon Ingram to the airport if you want Brandon Ingram. At the end of the day, like I will gladly, because contract wise, I don't even know how Memphis makes that deal work. That would be a challenging one to make work. Let me see here if we can make a trade machine work for the Toronto Raptors and the Memphis Grizzlies for Brandon Ingram. Brandon Ingram to Memphis. Memphis would have to trade. Almost impossible. I guess you can do it for Jeremy Grant and money, but like the Raptors aren't going to, or sorry, Jeremy Grant and draft picks, but I don't know if the Raptors are going to do that. Right. So that's the difficult thing, because you can't aggregate salaries on Jeremy Grant. So you can't add another piece. Right. You can't aggregate salaries on Isaiah Stewart. So you could hypothetically put together, Isaiah Stewart and Ty Jerome and Taylor Hendricks, and you can get pretty close to the money of necessary money, because obviously the Grizzlies have a little bit of cap space. And then I think they have a massive trade exemption as well. So like there are some options to do it, but it's tricky. Memphis would be really, really tough. Memphis would be really, really tough to make work at the end of the day. Super anti-silver. I think it's a weird job, right? Well, no, you can trade Jeremy Grant right away. You just can't aggregate salaries with him until December 15th. So you can't have Jeremy Grant get traded with another salary in a deal. You can trade him one for one, but you can't aggregate. Yeah, well, I wanted Stewart when the rumors about Detroit moving him. I wanted a Stewart, right? So yeah. Oh, nice, man. But it's tough. It's a really, really tough deal to make work. There are very few Brandon Ingram trades that work. Like there are very few. It is a ultra challenging trade. I spent hours one day trying to figure out a Brandon Ingram trade, and it was really, really tough, because you'd think on paper there's opportunities where you can kind of put it together. The interesting one would be if Portland was willing to do something, right? Because you could trade Brandon Ingram to the Portland Trailblazers. Portland has young guys that they just can't bring back, right? Like they cannot re-sign Scoot Henderson. They don't have the money to do it. At the end of the day, they do not have the money to be able to re-sign him in the offseason. So, like, you can trade, but, like, are they gonna do a deal based around Brandon Ingram for Scoot Henderson and Drew Holiday and, the Raptors add a second salary in? No. Are the Raptors gonna do a Brandon Ingram deal for Drew Holiday and take on an extra year of guaranteed money? Like, I guess not. I guess the same length of contract, maybe, but, like, was Portland moving Drew Holiday for Brandon Ingram? Probably not, So it's yeah, Ja Morant. Well, Jaw's not gonna happen, and I wouldn't want Ja here anyways. Ja makes less sense for this team than Brandon Ingram does, you know? Well, and those are the types of options. Now, if you were gonna do Ingram for Jimmy Butler's contract, you'd obviously have to add in the Pirtle deal, right? Or you'd have to add in Barrett as well with Ingram and then take that money. Yeah, because the Pirtle deal might not even be enough because it's what 62 million for Butler. Ingram's 40, so you'd have to add in. Yeah, like the Pirtle deal would work. So you could do Pirtle and Dick and Ingram for the Butler contract, and you have to take back a couple mil. Take back, the Moody would probably be too much money, but you could take back somebody, that's just cap filler at the end of the day. But I don't think that makes sense for them. So it's a tough contract, man. Well, Isaiah Stewart's already gone. Isaiah Stewart is no longer in Detroit, right? So Isaiah Stewart is gone. So that one doesn't work anymore. That was one that was talked about early in the offseason. But yeah, it's a tricky one. So there's not a lot of things you can do, unfortunately, to move off the Brandon Ingram contract. Easily be the best team in the East. I don't know about easily, Gabe, but like I like the enthusiasm. Where is CMB in 5 years? CMB is a perennial all first team defense guy in 5 years, who's averaging 15, 8 and 4, 17, 8 and 4. I really genuinely believe in the passing and his ability to kind of play all over the place. But I think he's a perennial first team all defense guy. I think he's a top 40 player in the sport. I really, really believe. Now, obviously, I'm the defense guy, right? Shed, CMB, Barnes, Leonard, yeah, Graves, yeah. No, I've major questions with Alan Graves on defense. Like, well, I Colin Murray-Boyle shot the ball well last year before the thumb injury. He was basically 40% from three, low volume. Pardon me. Before the thumb injury happened, right? And the 3-point shot, like you can watch videos of him in this offseason too. The hitch that he had between lower half, upper half is pretty much gone. I will always take the bet on somebody who has natural touch. So natural touch, is it 57 this year? I thought it was elevated from that. But yeah, I'll always bet on a guy who has natural touch. And I do believe that he is somebody who has continually shown that he has touch. So that's important. Yeah, 57. Yeah, 56, 832. Okay, so you can do Ingram and Pirtle, and then you just have to take on a minimum, which I don't think they would give us. Like, you're not getting Guy Santos, Will Richard maybe, but like at that point, like why would they make that deal? I'd rather take the expiring contract, right? The Raptors have to add massive to that, Yeah. Well, Stewart and Grant aren't in the same spot, but yeah, so it's it's a fun one. It's a fun conversation. And like I said, like CMB is different than Draymond, right? I don't want to put that comp on him because like Draymond's court processing is just, it's a superpower, right? So could he get there? Yeah, absolutely. But I don't like to compare him to guys who have, are at that level. That would be 100th percentile. And I think that honestly CMB's offensive ceiling is higher than that. But they're different players. There are a lot of similarities, but there's a lot of differences as well. So it's a tricky comp to make. But the last thing I want to talk about is Russell Westbrook, because with Russell Westbrook retiring, I think that for a long time I didn't appreciate how good he was. right? Like I didn't appreciate how good Russ Westbrook was. I knew how damn talented he was, but like I just didn't enjoy the game. I just didn't enjoy that. I didn't enjoy the way he played. I didn't enjoy how chaotic it was, the decision making, the process, all that kind of stuff. As Russell Westbrook aged and his career went on, the one thing that like I couldn't get past is how unbelievably hardworking the guy was. Like there are very few people in the history of basketball that worked harder on a basketball court than Russell Westbrook did. You look at 27,000 points, over 10,000 assists. He's a top 70 rebounder in the history of the sport. He's top 5 in steals, number 1 in triple doubles for now, top 30 in games played, top 30 in minutes played. Russell Westbrook, for all the flaws, is one of the best basketball players of this era. He's one of the hardest working basketball players that's ever been on a basketball court. Passion out the ass. Like the guy is just passionate about it. And yeah, did it always lead to wins? No. Like sometimes was he a malcontent? Yeah, I get all that stuff. But he never took the foot off the gas pedal, and you gotta respect that. Guy played hard as hell his whole career. I'm gonna miss Russell Westbrook. I wish that I appreciated Russell Westbrook earlier in his career than I did. It took me too long. I talk to people all the time, but especially as a guy in my 40s now, when people get into these debates where it's like, I'm gonna hate LeBron because it's cool. I'm gonna hate Kevin Durant, or I'm gonna hate Steph Curry. I'm gonna hate whoever. Guys, don't cheer for him if you want to. But man, appreciate the fact that you get to watch them live. Like, just appreciate it, man. I've been fortunate in my lifetime where I got to see so many great players play live and get to watch large sections of their careers. It's a special thing, right? Like if you can hate LeBron James, but man, the fact that you got to watch his career and I got to watch his whole career because we're the same age. It's incredible, right? Getting to watch Russell Westbrook his entire career, it's incredible, right? Durant, Jordan, Shaq, it doesn't matter who we're talking about. You gotta absolutely appreciate what you're getting to watch in front of you. So don't cheer for it, cheer against them, but appreciate it, because when it goes away, you miss it, right? You'll miss it for forever. Right. So it's a tough one. And yeah, I get it, man. Massive turnovers, inefficient shooter. I get all of the things. I get it. I was somebody that made those arguments. But goddamn, man, basketball was more fun when Russell Westbrook was Russell Westbrook. You know what I mean? Basketball is better when those high level guys, those guys that just capture an emotion in the sport, are there. And whether you loved him or hated him, Russell Westbrook captured emotion in basketball. He captured experience. People wanted to talk about it. People wanted to debate it. His involvement in the NBA made the NBA better, right? Made the product better, made the fans care more, whether you were for him or against him. Russell Westbrook's going to be missed, because Russell Westbrook, whether some people want to debate it or not, Russell Westbrook's a straight up Hall of Famer, right? Like he's not a first ballot guy. Guys, I don't care. I don't care. He is one of the greatest players I've ever had the privilege of watching in my lifetime, for just how good he is at what he does, right? And is what he does perfect? God, no. But my God, man, absolute game changer. He's a stud. So, and like I said, like somebody that later in his career, I just learned to love. So I'm going to miss Russell Westbrook. I'll miss CP3 when he's gone, and Kyle Lowry. And, like I already said my goodbyes so many, but like LeBron James, man, guys, appreciate it while you get to see it. That's all I'm going to say, is just appreciate it while it's here, because I tell you, when he retires, that is a career that will never happen again. That longevity, right? Never to get into issues in the public eye, like to be a model citizen for the most part at that level of fame. You know how few guys are supposed to be the greatest player in the world when they're 14 years old and actually become it? You know how rare that is, right? So, we got to appreciate the ride, because it's a privilege to be able to watch these guys do what they do. So, and that's why I talk about it. That's why I love the sport so much. Yeah, I'm a huge fan of basketball. I love basketball. And I think that, like I said, people need to stop arguing about stupid shit and trying to make their opinion matter and trying to diminish these players and just appreciate them. You don't have to cheer for them. You don't have to buy the jerseys, right? But respect the level of greatness. You know, that'd be my appreciate the fact that you get to witness it, because I tell you it's impressive. And that's where we'll end it. So I appreciate everybody listening. I appreciate everybody coming out. Like I said, if you want to support the channel, super chats, memberships, follow me on Instagram, follow me on YouTube, especially if you don't follow me on YouTube, get your ass on YouTube, follow me. And then we'll go from there. But like, it's been a blast, and we'll talk again soon. And I hope everybody has a great day. And lastly, go Bucks, go, because preseason starts tonight. My guys are about to ramp it up. So Buccaneers, Jets, preseason week 1, T-minus 1 hour and 11 minutes. Let's go, Buccaneers. Here we go. All right. Bye.